So the difference between traction and distraction is one word.
We all need the tools from this book.
The brain only wants one thing.
Today's guest has changed how we think about habits, distraction, and what really drives us. Nir Eyal, New York Times best-selling author, startup founder, investor. But before becoming the author of Indistractable and Hooked,
When I was a kid, what did I want to be?
he was just a curious kid with big questions and even bigger dreams. Nir's journey took him from BCG to a solar startup, and nearly off the edge.
Because I had put all that on my personal credit card.
He started as an idealistic AmeriCorps volunteer,
I used to be extremely liberal.
but quickly ran into the harsh reality of the corporate world.
Then I got a new boss. And this boss was a piece of crap.
That's when he realized
People don't quit a job. People quit a boss.
Nir didn't just quit. He started decoding how all of us get hooked and how to break free.
What kind of jobs are associated with mental illness?
He went on to build companies, write books, and study the root of focus, behavior, and burnout.
I was actually obese, and I remember feeling like food controlled me.
A deeply personal turning point, one that taught him that before we can change our habits, we have to understand our discomfort.
All human behavior is about one thing.
In this conversation, Nir gets brutally honest about what distraction really is.
And the worst kind of distraction is the distraction that
It's not the job, it's the system, the values, forgetting who we want to become.
values are attributes of the person you want to become.
And that's why so many of us still feel stuck, even after we escape the 9 to 5.
A lot of people quit their jobs because they want more freedom.
Nir's path, from burnout to clarity, reveals what most of us miss.
So it starts with identifying your values in 3 life domains. If it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it. Bullshit. Well, of course, the hard work you're never going to feel like doing.
And why productivity hacks alone won't save you.
I go to dinner, and any family with children, everybody around the table is looking at their phone, right? The mom, the dad, the kids, the brother, the sister, everybody's on their phones.
In a world screaming for your attention, this episode helps you take it back. Let's get into it.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm so happy that we have you today. It's a funny story how we get connected. Actually, we're both in the part-time YouTuber Academy from Ali Abdal's community, so shout out to him. I reached out to you because you have such an interesting profile. You've built companies, you write best-selling books, and one of the books that I love the most is Indistractable. It's a
Thank
book
you.
about how we can stay indistracted in the day that's more and more distraction around us. I usually start the podcast to ask my guests this question, two truths and a lie, about their escape 9 to 5 journey. The 3 statements about you build your portfolio life, so I can guess which one is.
Sure. Okay. Why don't we start with, what did I want to be when I grow up? When I was a kid, what did I want to be? 2 truths and a lie about the things I wanted to be.
Okay.
I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an author. And I wanted to be a fighter pilot. What's the 2 truths and what's the lie?
I think the lie is to be a doctor.
That's right. How did you know that?
So what's the story behind these other 2?
So yeah, I really wanted, actually the first thing I wanted to be is I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And then I got glasses. Now I've had LASIK, but I had glasses from a very young age. So that dream dissolved. Back then you couldn't be a fighter pilot with glasses. But I did love writing from a young age. And so here I am. I'm a writer.
Yeah, that's a dream come true. I think a lot of people being creative is always something that myself wanted to be. Unfortunately, for a lot of people that we are restricted to our other duties or things like that. So we're tied to our desk, and which is why the name of this podcast called Escape 9 to 5. Before we dive into your book, of course, we're going to talk about your book. I want to go back to your origin story. Before you built the 2 companies, you have a pretty conventional successful career path. You started your career in BCG, and then you went for MBA degree in Stanford. I know that Stanford is very famous for creating entrepreneurs, but I feel like most of your peers might be also going into, like, let's say, private equity and things like that. So what makes you to take that leap between different options?
Yeah, so I had started a solar energy business before going to Stanford. And in fact, Stanford was the only school I applied to because I remember at the time I had this warehouse. This was back in 2005. So this was before the more recent rise in solar energy. Back then, it was kind of a crazy thing to do. This was before the subsidies. And we were kind of one of very, very few people who were doing solar back then. Now it's a huge industry, but back then it was very, very few people were doing it. And I remember one day I opened the newspaper and I was reading about these people in Silicon Valley who were selling bits. Like they were selling nothing. They were just selling information zipping around the internet. And I remember thinking about, like, I've got a warehouse full of solar panels. And if people don't buy those solar panels, I'm going to be bankrupt. And that was very, very stressful because I had put all that on my personal credit card. So it was very, very stressful. And I remember just thinking, like, wow, that would be so amazing to not have any inventory. I got to figure out how these people in Silicon Valley are doing it. And so the more research I did into tech businesses, the more enamored I became. And I said, okay, how do I get into this tech industry? I knew nothing about tech. I remember my first week of school at Stanford, I asked somebody what a venture capitalist was. I had no idea what that was. And so Stanford was actually the only school I applied to. If it wasn't for Stanford, I would have continued to run my solar energy business at the time.
So you had the solar energy business before you applied for Stanford. Oh, gotcha.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Did you jump from BCG to run the solar panel business?
Exactly. I was at BCG for a few years. I learned a lot about how business works, having worked with a lot of these Fortune 100 companies, and learned about this amazing concept of economies of scale. And so I essentially took what I learned at BCG and applied it to what I saw was a big opportunity in solar energy. It turns out I was very, very right. I just I got into it early and I got out of it early. Thankfully, we sold the business to a private equity firm. Can't complain. It kind of put us on our feet. But it was only then that I went to Stanford.
Got you. Wow. You're such a pioneer because I'm in the tech space. We always refer to the story of the rising of solar energy and the dropping in price.
Oh, yeah. So maybe I got out at the right time. I don't know. I got out in 2006, and then after that, there was the rise of Solar City and like all these amazing companies, went public. By the time it was crazy. Nobody, we were begging for business at the time.
Yeah. I always wanted to dive into people's story if we can indulge a little bit. Like,
sure.
Did you just all of a sudden rise, stand up from your desk in BCG and say that, yes, today I'm going to do the solar business? Or is it a gradual change, or what happened?
Yeah, no, it's a terrific question. So for me, I remember when I joined BCG, which at the time was an amazing job, right? Like I needed to make money. I remember originally I wanted to be a journalist. I've always loved writing, but I remember in the journalism department, I was a journalism co-major. I remember in the journalism department, they had a big billboard and it said the job and then the salary. And I remember looking at the salary of what journalists make, and I thought, I got bills to pay. I can't work for that. That sounds crazy. And so I had to take a conventional job. And I remember before I went to undergrad, I didn't know anything about economics. And then I really fell in love with economics. I really actually changed my whole political view. I used to be extremely liberal. I took a year off between high school and college to do public service. I was an AmeriCorps volunteer, and I was kind of out there to save the world. And then the more I learned about economics, I learned about incentives, and I learned about how the world really works. That kind of just changed my worldview. And I really appreciated, frankly, that if there's one field, one group of people who has done more to advance the standard of living of the world, of humanity, I wish it was the nonprofit sector. I wish it was just giving people food, but it's not. The people who have really raised standards of living of the human race are the really boring jobs. It's, the shipping container people. It's the logistics people. It's the inventors who are tinkering all day, making things a little bit cheaper, a little bit more convenient. Those are the people who, through their invisible efforts, the things that we just take for granted, those are the people who have really improved the standard of living. And so I just thought, business would be a great place to change the world. And so that's what I did, trying to figure out how do I learn about business. So I went to consulting. Now, the problem with consulting, the first boss I had at BCG, his name was Terry. He was fantastic. I remember the first week working for him, I said, this guy is amazing. There's so much I'm going to learn from him. He was inspiring. He was smart. He was relatable. I thought, I'm just going to work for this guy for the rest of my life. He's just amazing. And if this is what consulting is all about, sign me up. And then after about a year and a half or so, Terry got hired by our client. right? Boston Consulting Group, you work for these companies, airlines and pharmaceutical companies and all these big companies. So he got hired away by one of these companies. And then I got a new boss. And this boss was a piece of crap. He was a terrible, terrible manager. He was a very good individual contributor, but he was put into this role and he just did not know how to manage people. And I couldn't stand it. I was so stressed. He was one of these people who expected you to respond every 10 minutes to an email. At the time, we didn't have iPhones. We had what we called Crackberries, right? So everybody was on their Crackberry all the time, the BlackBerry. And I remember like getting, just constant anxiety about what does he need? What does he need? What does he need? And that was no way to live. And so I was looking for something to do after about 2 years that was not consulting, because I just couldn't stand not working for someone that I admired.
Yeah. What a great story of somebody's life in a consulting firm. I think, like, I definitely have experienced this in the same team, that there will be boss who are like super micromanaged, and then there will be boss who trust you, they give you the space to make mistake, and also always have your back when you really make mistake.
Right. Yeah, I remember thinking like, what I wanted was a boss. Like there's a handful of people in my life that I've worked for who I wanted to make look good. Right. Yeah. Who I liked so, and that was always the principle of like, okay, that's how I know I'm going to like this job. And people don't realize that. They're like, people don't quit a job. People quit a boss. Right. If you don't want to make that person look good, then what are you doing all day? Like, why would I work hard? I'm going to work hard so that schmuck can look good? No, I'm out of here. So if I could find the person who I wanted to make look good, the rest of it didn't matter, right? Like, I didn't really care about how much money did we save the client and would the client, and buy more consulting. Who cares? What I wanted to do was make Terry look good. And that's what I took pride in. But once that was gone, I didn't want to stick around.
Yeah, it's also interesting when I actually was listening to your podcast with Mark Manson, and then you talked about this. Burnout actually happen when people face high expectation but low control. That maybe is the scenario that you have with your second boss. And then I also resonate with that a lot. A lot of my friends also, we work in banking, consulting, like law firms, you name it. All of those high expectation but low control jobs. But now that when I have these conversations and I'm doing my own startup, I have high expectation, but I have high control, but also very stressful. Like, is that idea of control, what's the swift after you changed to build your own solar panel company?
It's interesting. So I can't take credit for this research, by the way. This comes from the work of Stansfield and Candy out of Oxford. And they basically define, they didn't call it burnout, but I'm conjecturing that that's what we call it today. I don't know if the phrase existed when they did this research, but they were basically looking at this question. I think it's a fascinating question. What kind of jobs are associated with mental illness? What kind of jobs lead to anxiety and depression disorders? And, if I asked you that, having not told you anything, you would most people would say like, oh, a sad job, right? Like being a mortician, being a veterinarian that has to put puppy dogs to sleep, right? That would be a sad job. Turns out, no, that's not necessarily, it has nothing to do with what you do. It has to do with the environment you do it in. So it turns out that the jobs that literally, and this isn't even a correlation, this is a causal relationship, that we know that jobs that have high expectations coupled with low control, those are the kind of jobs that literally cause anxiety and depression disorders. And so what's interesting, what you said about an entrepreneur is that entrepreneurship jobs, typically, that's where people flourish, because high expectations, the moral of the story is don't lower your expectations. The moral of the story is give more control. Because when someone has high expectations and high control, that's what we call thriving. People do really, really well in those circumstances when they have high expectations and they have the tool to display their agency, where they can actually make a difference when they have control over the circumstance. That's amazing. That's actually when people do their best. But it's the situations when we have high expectations and low control, right? Like when I was working for my crappy boss at BCG, he'd want stuff all the time, and I just couldn't deliver it in time, right? It was a constant treadmill of more. And no matter how much I did, he was never satisfied. And so it was depressing. It was awful.
Yeah, what many people are, I think, trapped in those scenarios. They often, like, what kind of advice you would want to give some people who are feeling stuck in that kind of high expectation but low control job, so that they can actually thrive? Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to quit the job. Like, what would you say that the one small step that
I mean, I think a lot of people sell themselves short. Look, a lot of people, this doesn't bother, right? If you can, so there's a few different paths you can take. If it doesn't bother you, like, for example, I was talking with a friend of mine here in Singapore who was telling me about their former job with the government. And it's funny because, the Singapore government is actually run by very smart people, but he was saying that in his particular department, you just couldn't get fired. Like, you would have to commit a crime. You'd have to steal. You'd have to commit a crime to get fired. So performance didn't matter. And there's these kind of jobs where somehow people do actually lower their own expectations and they say, you know what? The deadline didn't, pass and went. I didn't turn in. What are you going to do? You're going to fire me? And they work their little 9-to-5s and they collect their paycheck and they get promoted based on seniority, which is ridiculous. I think that concept needs to be banned from the workplace. Why should somebody who sticks around and does a shitty job, why should they get a promotion just because they lasted longer? No, that's stupid. But that's, a lot of workplaces, especially when it comes to government work and bureaucratic work, that's what happens. The longer you stay, the higher your pay grade, regardless of the fact that you just sit at your desk and do nothing all day. So, if that bothers you, you need to leave. Like, your soul is going to shrivel up and die, right? You don't want that. So you need to leave that kind of situation if that's not the kind of person you are and find somewhere where you do thrive. Now, I'm not saying that's for everybody. I'm not saying everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It is very, very difficult. It's rewarding, but it's very difficult. So I think it starts with values, frankly, to answer your question. And this is something I talk about a lot in my book, Indistractable. It starts with figuring out what are your values. And a lot of people talk about values, but they don't really define values. I'm going to actually define values. Values are attributes of the person you want to become. I'll say it again. Values are attributes of the person you want to become. So you have to ask yourself, how would the person I want to become spend their time? And for many people, if the person you want to become is someone who spends a lot of time with their family, you should not be an entrepreneur. I'm sorry. I hate to say it. You should not. It's just incongruous. An entrepreneur, especially, someone who starting, a tech company or something in a new space. There are some entrepreneurs, if you own a restaurant, for example, maybe even then, actually, you still, if somebody doesn't show up for work, guess who has to do the work? You. If somebody doesn't clean the bathroom, you're cleaning the bathroom. So almost every entrepreneur, the buck stops with you. And so you have to be prepared that has to be your most important value. And you know what? Kids are going to suffer. My father was an entrepreneur. There was most nights and weekends in my life, I didn't see him because he was on the road. That was part of the lifestyle. So you need to expect that in advance. I think the tragedy is that companies pull this bait and switch, right? If you're going to join consulting and a tech startup or banking, you kind of know, right? Like, if you don't know that's a lifestyle, then you just didn't do your homework. Like, bankers, consultants, tech entrepreneurs, you're working 60 to 80 hours a week. That's just the life. And who doesn't know that? What bugs me, what I think is very unethical, is when people join a company and all day long they're expected to check emails and WhatsApp and attend stupid meetings all day long. And then they go home at 5:00 and the boss thinks, oh, you're working 40 hours a week. But then it's only after work that you actually do your work. That's awful. And it's not awful because working a lot of hours is bad. If that's your values and you want to work a lot of hours at the expense of other things in your life, fine. That's your life. I'm not going to tell you to do it differently. What's unethical about that is that it's a bait and switch. That we need to be upfront with employees of, hey, this is how many hours are expected. I'm going to expect you to be in the office to do meetings all day, and then your work happens at night. But if that's not clear, then you're going to get people churning over. You're going to get a lot of employees quitting over time and burning out.
Yeah. I totally agree with you because I've been in banking. I was in banking for 10 years. I cannot figure out. I was like, people complaining about working, I don't know, from 6 a.m. to 12, let's say. But actually, the real day starts from 6 p.m. after all the meetings are done. I think it's a good segue that we just dive into your book, The Indistractable. But I think not just for people who work like long hour job, but everyone that we all need the tools from this book. So the core idea, I think, behind your book is that distraction are not the problem. The problem is our inability to deal with discomfort. So maybe you can explain a little bit to our audience about this.
Yeah. So let's start with what is distraction. Distraction, by definition, is any action that pulls you away from what you plan to do. Okay? And the opposite of distraction, if you ask people what's the opposite of distraction, most people will tell you it's focus. It's not focus. But rather the opposite of distraction is traction, right? Obviously, traction and distraction. Traction is any action that pulls you towards what you said you were going to do, things that move you towards your values, towards becoming the kind of person you want to become, those are acts of traction. So the difference between traction and distraction is one word, and that one word is intent. As Dorothy Parker said, the time you plan to waste is not wasted time. If you want to work all day, if you want to play video games all day, if you want to watch Netflix all day, do it. It's your life. Like, why are we so up in arms about, oh, technology's bad, right? You're checking Facebook is bad. TikTok is bad. But wait, watching golf on TV, that's okay? Why? They're both a waste of time. They're both entertainment. They're both pastimes. And there's nothing wrong with any of it, as long as it's done on your schedule and according to your values, not somebody else's, certainly not some media companies. So anything you plan to do in advance is traction. Conversely, anything that is not what you plan to do in advance is distraction. And the worst kind of distraction is the distraction that tricks you into prioritizing the urgent stuff and the easy stuff at the expense of the hard and important work. So let me give you an example. For years, I would sit down at my desk and I would say, okay, I'm going to get to work. Nothing's going to get in my way. I'm not going to get distracted. I'm just going to do this one thing. I'm going to get started on this project. Okay, here I go. I'm going to do it. But first, let me check some email, right? Let me just scroll that Slack channel. Let me just check on LinkedIn, see what's happening in industry news, right? Those are part of my job. I got to check email. Email's part of my job, right? I got to do it. But what I didn't realize is that distraction was tricking me. And I didn't even realize I was being tricked, because if it's not what you said you were going to do in advance, if I said I was going to work on that big project and now I'm checking email, that is the worst kind of distraction, because it has fooled me into doing this busy work as opposed to real work that I said I was going to do in advance. So just because just because it is a work-related task doesn't mean it's not a distraction. So we've got traction, we've got distraction. Now we've got triggers. Triggers are things that pull you towards traction or distraction. We have two kinds of triggers. Most people are familiar with the external triggers, the pings, the dings, the rings, anything in our outside environment that tells us what to do next. But studies find that even though that's what most people blame, so, oh, my phone distracted me, my computer distracted me, Slack distracted me, all these things outside of me distracted me, those only account, studies have found, for 10% of our distractions, only 10%. The other 90% of our distractions are not external triggers. It's not about the stuff happening outside of you. It's about stuff happening inside your own head. These are called internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable sensations that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety. This is the source of 90% of our distractions. So where my work is different from everybody else's work out there on this topic, people who blame technology and say it's technology's fault, blah, 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 stop using email, that stuff is crap. Because none of it will work. None of it, even my stuff, my techniques, will not work unless you first and foremost, before you do anything else, figure out what is causing the 90% of the distraction that drives you away from what you said you're going to do, which is always an uncomfortable feeling. If you can't sit at your desk and do your work, if you can't sit with your family without checking your phone, if you can't, whatever it is that you're trying to resist, if you can't resist it, it's because of an impulse control issue. It's not a character flaw. You don't have ADHD probably. It's only a small percentage of the population who has that. A lot of people think they do. They don't. It's simply that you haven't learned the tools to deal with discomfort in a healthy way rather than a harmful way. So it turns out that becoming indistractable is a skill just like any other.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I really like the idea that you talked about is the inability to deal with discomfort. Because I want to also dive into your story that you actually lost 60 pounds when you're in college, that you used to be obese at some point. I myself went through a transformation a few years ago, just from someone who has no whatsoever routine to go to the gym to become someone who's really fit. Then I realized it's actually like a mind training. So it actually got me to be more focused on anything else that I do. Maybe we can tap into that story a little bit, and also you can show some simple mindset shift that people can adopt to reduce
Totally.
this.
Yeah, I think so. That's why I got interested in this topic in the first place, was that I was struggling with my weight from a very early age, and I was clinically obese. I wasn't just chubby. I was actually obese, and went to fat camp, went to the doctors, the whole 9 yards. And I remember feeling like food controlled me. And that's, I think, where this fascination from how technology and different distractions seem to control us. And so I think a watershed moment for me in my life was when I discovered that fundamentally, all human behavior is about one thing. We learn about carrots and sticks. You probably heard this dichotomy, right? That people seek pleasure and avoid pain. Sigmund Freud said something like this. Jeremy Bentham said something like this. Turns out that's not true. That neurologically speaking, when we actually look inside the brain only wants one thing. And everything you do is about this one thing. And that one thing is the desire to escape discomfort. Everything you do is about the desire to escape discomfort. Even wanting to feel good, right? Craving, desire, lusting, hunger, all of these things, this seeking of pleasure is itself psychologically destabilizing, right? I want it, I crave it, I desire it. It's wanting to feel good, but it's still uncomfortable. And so the way the brain gets us to act, to do everything and anything, is simply by by spurring us to escape that discomfort. So that must therefore mean if all human behavior is spurred by a psychological itch, this need to escape discomfort, that therefore means that time management is pain management, that money management is pain management, that weight management is pain management. It's all pain management. So to me, some people hear that and they're like, oh, that's so depressing. What about happy feelings? Okay, yeah, fine. But to me, that's incredibly empowering because that means it's just a feeling. That's all it is, right? Happy, sad, angry, worried. Like these are just feelings. They're feelings. And you've dealt with plenty of feelings and you're going to deal with plenty more. But that's all they are. They're not emotions. They're not physiological. Most people don't know the difference between an emotion and a feeling. An emotion is a physiological response. A feeling is the psychological interpretation of that physiological response. And guess what, folks? You can't choose your emotions, but you sure as hell can choose your feelings. Yes. And that's amazing. That's amazing. You can choose your feelings. What? You absolutely can. And so that's a big part of becoming indistractable is reimagining these triggers, these emotions. I'll give you a perfect example. So where I make most of my money, what I do for a living, it's not the writing, it's the speaking. And one thing you don't want as a public speaker is to have stage fright. And I used to suffer from terrible stage fright. I would get on stage, and right before I was about to walk up the steps, my heart would start pounding. I'd get these sweaty armpits. I'd get a super dry throat. And I would tell myself this story that I was feeling bad, right? That those emotions, I wasn't controlling those emotions, the heart rate, the sweaty armpits. I wasn't controlling the emotions, but I was controlling the story I was telling myself. I was interpreting those emotions as bad feelings. I'm no good at this. I'm never going to be good at this. I'm not a professional. Other professional speakers don't feel this way. I started making up all these stories. And to be honest with you, I still get the same exact emotional response. Sitting here talking to you, I still am nervous. I'm still getting stage fright. I'm still getting heart palpitations. But I reinterpreted the story. Now, when I feel those exact same emotional triggers, I've reinterpreted the feeling. So now when I get that heartbeat or I get sweaty armpits, I'm telling myself, okay, my heart is beating quickly, so it can send more blood to my brain so it can process more oxygen in order to deliver my best possible presentation.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've simply reinterpreted that story. So that's incredibly powerful. So to me, that carries over into so many aspects of my life that I can decide how I want to feel. I don't control the emotion, but I control the interpretation. I control the feeling.
Yeah, I think that's like the narrative of the narrative of how we interpret different events. In your case, is you use this example of stage fright. And also a lot of people, they have other examples. For example, somebody experiences a setback and how they interpret that, it decides whether they're going to take the next step and actions. I want to tap into that. How can we adopt that mindset when we're maybe reinterpret like distractions in life?
Right. So I think where we have gone off track is that people want to believe that there are easy solutions.
Right.
We hear a lot about flow. Just get into flow. Oh, it's so easy. Just get into flow. Or they haven't read the research. If you actually read the book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he talks about flow in athletes, in artists, in, people doing stuff they love. Can someone please tell me how to love doing my taxes? Nobody has ever gotten into flow doing their taxes. Maybe accountants, right? Maybe they're really into it. How do I get into flow when it's something I don't like to do? I don't need any help doing stuff I like to do. That's easy. It's the hard stuff. You can't get into flow doing really hard work. Or here's a better one, habits. Oh, just make it a habit, right? Well, when people say they want to turn something into a habit, what are they actually saying? If you read between the lines, what they're saying is there's something I have to do that I don't want to do, but I want to have done, right? I hate exercise. I don't want to exercise, but I want to have exercised, right? I don't like writing. I don't like meditating. I don't like doing any of that stuff. But if I turn it into a habit, I will somehow find this magic button, ta-da, and now it becomes a habit. Now it's on autopilot. I hate to tell you this, folks. There is no such button. Because habits are by definition. What is the definition of a habit? The definition of a habit is a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. And I've studied habits for over a decade. I know all about habits. By definition, they're a behavior done with little or no conscious thought. So if what you are trying to get better at requires conscious thought, it ain't going to become a habit. Never, ever, ever. You cannot turn writing, right? People want to write a book and they go, wow, why am I not writing my book? I don't have a writing habit. No, it's because writing will never be a habit. I've been an author now for over a decade. How do I write without thinking? Do you know? I don't know, Lydia. How do I write without thinking? That's impossible. Meditation. I'll start a meditation habit. Well, if you're meditating without thinking, you're asleep. The whole point is to pay attention to your thoughts and let them go. You're doing it wrong. If you're trying to exercise, now some exercise can be a habit, like walking and talking to a friend. Sure, that's a gentle form of exercise. Sure, you're not really thinking about it. But how do I go to the gym and try and beat my PR without thinking? I'm going to hurt myself, right? It can't be done. It requires conscious thought. So don't make those behaviors into habits. Make them into routines. Okay, what is a routine? A routine is simply a series of behaviors frequently repeated. There's no expectation that it has to be easy. So this is the problem. When you asked earlier, the misconception here is that we try and make everything easy, when some behaviors will never be easy. They will always be hard. And so habits is the wrong tool for the job. Yeah, if I've got a nail and I want to hammer it in, I could use a screwdriver, but really what would work much better is to use a hammer. So it's just the wrong tool for the job. You need to know how to build routines. And sometimes a routine will become a habit, but oftentimes it won't. So you need to have the right tool for the job.
Would you say the right tool to build routine is the time boxing technique that you really love?
It's a big one. So step number one to become indistractable is mastering the internal triggers. So know how to deal with the discomfort. And I give a dozen different things you can do to deal with that discomfort. That's step number one, mastering internal triggers. The second step is making time for traction, because you can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from, right? I'll say it again. You can't say you got distracted unless you know what you got distracted from. So if I look at your calendar and there's a bunch of white space, it's empty, you can't complain, because what did you get distracted from? You didn't plan anything to do. And saying I have a to-do list doesn't count. A to-do list that's a mile long is one of the worst things you can do for your personal productivity. There's actually very little research that to-do lists are effective. A much, much better technique is called time boxing. I didn't invent it. It's been around for decades and decades. Thousands of peer-reviewed studies have shown this is incredibly effective. And it's simply the practice of putting down what you want to do and when you want to do it, not what you will finish. Okay, this is going to blow people's minds. People totally misinterpret time boxing. They try it once, they work for 30 minutes, they didn't finish the task, and they say, oh, time boxing doesn't work. No, you are not working it properly. The goal of time boxing is not to finish anything. What? The goal of time boxing is not to finish anything. The goal of time boxing is to see how much you can do in a period of time when you work without distraction. That's it. That's it. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, I'm going to work on this task for 30 minutes. And then you're going to see when I do nothing but, okay, so I'm not going to put on my to-do list and work on it for 5 minutes and then get a cup of coffee and then check email and then check Slack. No. I'm just going to do that one thing for 30 minutes. Then I can say, okay, in 30 minutes, how much did I get done? And therefore I can plan ahead how much time I need to finish the entire task. And this is one of the reasons that to-do lists are awful and time boxing is way, way better because it has a feedback loop. It teaches you how long things take. So that is step number 2 to becoming indistractable. Make time for traction.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because to-do list, right, doesn't come with the time, but to-do list
right.
means to finish something within, let's say, 2 days. How do you help people to transition from to-do list to an effective time boxing technique?
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with taking things out of your brain and putting them on a piece of paper, putting them in an app. That's fine. But people stop there. That's what's wrong. They wake up in the morning and they look at all the million things they're supposed to do. And then they start doing the easy things. They start doing the fun things. They don't get to the hard work that actually moves our life forward. I'll tell you, Lydia, one time I'm embarrassed to tell you this. I used to, more than one time, to be honest, I would like finish a task and then I would write it on my to-do list after I had done it just so I could feel good about checking it off. How stupid is that? It's so dumb. And I used to do that because I had programmed my brain that it's all about checking boxes. But that's really stupid because, well, who says that the box you checked was the right thing to do? So if you're not sitting down in advance and saying, okay, I'm going to spend, this is the most important thing I have to do in my day. I'm going to spend 2 hours on this. I'm going to spend 1 hour on that. I'm going to go to that meeting. I'm going to check email from this time to this time. That is the proper procedure. So you're immediately taking those things that you have to get done and you're putting time into not finishing, but seeing how much progress you can make in a unit of time so that then you can extrapolate how much time you'll need to finish the entire project.
So it's a constant feedback loop.
That's exactly right.
I think for myself, I use this thing called location blocks. So I would just go to a coffee shop and I stay there for the entire morning. And I also use the app that you recommend in your book, Forest. I love that.
Nice. Great app.
Here, I have so much issue about distraction when I was working in banking, especially on the trading floor. Like you're constantly getting all the distraction. Yeah. And then I installed that app for like 2 years. I constantly use it. But at some point, I don't need that app again.
Yeah.
And then now I need the app again. I don't know why. I think it's all of the social media has become so much more powerful nowadays compared to a few years ago.
I'm guessing it's probably, with the people who struggle most with distraction actually are the people who have the most freedom in their jobs, which is kind of funny. It's kind of ironic because a lot of people quit their jobs because they want more freedom, right? They don't want to be told what to do all day. And then they realize that when you're not told what to do all day, you've got to tell yourself what to do all day. Which means I'll just check social media for a minute. I'll just check the news for 5 minutes. And then we know where that goes, right? And then you feel awful at the end of the day because you haven't been that productive. So it actually is the people who have the most freedom in their day. The worst part is they look at their schedule for the day and they're like, oh, I got the entire day. I'm going to do so much. I'm going to be so productive. But first, let me check email. First, let me check the news. First, let me check stock prices. First, let me check sports scores. And then by the time they actually start the real work, half the day has passed away.
So how do you build your schedule around your values? Can you give me an example of your day, how it looks like?
Sure. Yeah. I practice what I preach. Absolutely. So it starts with identifying your values in 3 life domains. The first life domain is you. If you can't take care of yourself, can't take care of other people, you can't make the world a better place. So look at your week ahead and ask yourself, how would the person I want to become take care of themselves? So this includes a bedtime. I used to tell my daughter, you have to go to bed. It's past your bedtime. And then she looked up at me one day and she said, Daddy, do you have a bedtime? And she was absolutely right. I didn't have a bedtime. Now I have a bedtime. So it starts with that, right? Like we all know how important sleep is. It's very important for our children, right? We know that children need adequate sleep. You need adequate sleep. So have that as your bedtime and then work backwards. How much time do you need for proper hygiene? Do you want time for rest? Do you want time to read a book? Do you want time to play video games? Whatever you want time for in your day, put that in your schedule first, okay? And it's not just the productive stuff. It's the fun stuff. I want you to put time not only for the exercise and the healthy things, but also for the fun things. You like watching YouTube, you like playing video games, you like going on social media, do it, but put it in your schedule. That's how you turn distraction into traction, by planning for it. That's exactly what you were meant to do because that's what you said you were going to do in advance. Then you're going to put in the next life domain, which is your relationships. How much time, if it's important to you, how much time do you want to spend with your friends, your loved ones, your kids, your spouse, your parents, your whoever, members of your community? How much time is important for you to schedule with them? Put that in your calendar. It's incredibly important. Don't be ships in the night and I'll see you when I see you. Make that time for the people you love in your life. Then finally, the work domain. Now, work can be split into 2 kinds of work. We have what's called reactive work and we have what's called reflective work. Reactive work is like what you did on the trading floor, right? All day long, you weren't expected to focus on one thing. You were expected to be available, right? Like make this trade, do this thing. That's reactive work. Now, that's going to be part of everybody's job. The problem is that if you spend all day doing reactive work, reacting to emails, reacting to taps on the shoulders, reacting to meetings and messages, if that's all you do all day long, you will habituate yourself to always looking for people to tell you what to do, as opposed to asking yourself what's important. And the only time you can ask yourself what's important and come back with a competent answer is when you are doing reflective work. Reflective work is the kind of work that can only be done without distraction. Planning, strategizing, thinking, being creative requires you to set time aside by yourself to do that reflective work. And if you're not setting that time aside, you're running real fast in the wrong direction. So now here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a calendar. You will have too much on it. You will have overlapping things you want to do. Yes. And now you have to do the most important thing, which is to define what is more important to you. What is aligned with your values? If you spend more time at work, that's going to be less time with your family. If you spend more time with your family, you might spend less time at the gym. Whatever the case is, you have to figure out how to fit the things you want in that schedule, because this is, again, one of the things that is so much better about a time box calendar over a to-do list. Why to-do lists suck is because to-do lists don't ask you to make trade-offs. Just add it to a to-do list. Or here's the even stupider thing I've heard a million times that I can't stand. If it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it. Bullshit. Every email takes less than 2 minutes. If you do a 2-minute task and a 2-minute task and a 2-minute task, your whole day is doing 2-minute tasks. That is dumb. You schedule time to do admin work, and that's it. That's the time you're going to do those 2-minute tasks, and you put them in that bucket, and you check off all those 2-minute tasks. Fine. But don't use these silly excuses of just do it here, just do it there, because your whole day is going to be that. Because we like it. It's easy. I don't have to think. I don't have to make any trade-offs until I reflect on my day and say, oh my God, I didn't do the most important stuff. Or even worse, I look back at my life and I say I didn't do the most important stuff. So don't let that happen to you. By making those trade-offs and saying, okay, here's my week ahead. Here's living my life according to my values, and I'm going to try my darnest to do what I say I'm going to do. And sometimes that means, hey, you know what? I didn't finish this task. That's fine. It's okay, because I can always reset the schedule tomorrow. Once you set that schedule in the day, that's it. It's done, locked and loaded. But you can change it tomorrow and the next day and the next day before those days begin, because your mentality here is to be a scientist. You're not a drill sergeant. You're a scientist. What's the job of a scientist? You make a hypothesis, you run an experiment, you look at the results, and you make your calendar easier and easier to follow over time.
So you set the schedule every day before the day started, like the day before?
Right.
Oh.
So I do this only once a week. So most people, about 85% of people I've worked with over the years, it's a once a week type of thing. Because they know, okay, I wake up around this time, I have meetings around that time, I need this much time for email, I need this much time. They kind of know what the routines are like. Some people, like people who are doctors, or, sometimes people don't know what their schedule is going to look like until they get there. Sometimes those are edge cases where they plan their entire day first thing in the morning. But the vast majority of people, like, for example, for myself, every Sunday night, 8 p.m., it takes me maybe 10 minutes. I review my entire calendar for the week ahead. Oh, I've got this meeting coming here. That means I need more time to write over there. I want time with my daughter, so let me move it around here. Okay, calendar is locked and loaded for the week. Let's go.
Oh, I see. We tapped into this people who have more freedom at their job. Maybe it's more difficult for them to manage their schedule. What are some of the, like for entrepreneurs and creative, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see them making when it comes to focus and productivity?
Going with the flow. That's one of the worst things. People wait for, I think the worst mistake is that people wait for inspiration, especially creatives.
Yeah.
They think, I'll write that book, I'll do that work, I'll write that pitch, whatever. I'll make my sales calls when I feel like it. I just don't feel like it right now. And of course, that gets back to the core of human motivation. It's about the desire to escape discomfort. Well, of course, the hard work you're never going to feel like doing. That's what makes it hard. So the difference between an amateur and a professional, and this is according to Stephen Pressfield, is that an amateur does things when they want to. They're creative when they feel like it. A professional puts their butt in the chair and does the work even when they don't feel like it. And it turns out the more you put your butt in the chair, the more you actually are creative.
If you only pick one hack or tips from the book Indistractable, what do you hope people can remember from?
So it's the model. What took most time from all, after I did all the research, was figuring out how to put the research into something that was simple enough to be useful. So if you only remember one thing, it's traction, distraction, internal triggers, external triggers, and then that becomes your compass. So step number 1, master internal triggers. And of course, there's like a bunch of little steps on how to do that. Step number 2, make time for traction. Step number 3, hack back external triggers. And step number 4, prevent distraction with pacts. Those are the 4 big strategies. That's tactics are what you do. And there's lots of little tactics here and there, lots of life hacks and tips and tricks. Those are all nice. But if you don't understand the strategy, you won't know how to put those to good use. They'll kind of just come and go like every fad we've seen in the space. It's much more important. Tactics are what you do. Strategy is why you do it. So it's imperative you understand the psychology of distraction so you can finally overcome it.
Because it's been published for 5 years, right? Is there anything that you've changed your mind around in the past few years when it comes to distraction?
Yeah, so actually, I just sent yesterday to my publisher the second edition. We're going to publish a second edition of the book. And
Yes.
not that much has changed. There's more case studies, there's more examples, there's a few apps that are now, there was a bunch of apps that I was recommending back
Uh,
5 years ago that are now actually built into your phone that are free for everyone. So there's a bit of updating in that respect. But the basic model, the basic 4 steps of becoming indistractable hasn't changed a bit.
what's one question or topic that you wish more people ask you?
I think I'm very concerned about how we're thinking about children and distraction. I think we are falling into a very warm, fuzzy, safe place as parents. I don't know if you have kids, but like every parent I know wants to blame technology for every bad thing their kid does. And I think that's extremely dangerous because this is what parents always do. Even though I'm confident technology plays a role in children's behavior, the problem is it's such a convenient excuse. And we have so many parenting myths. Sugar makes you hyper. Of course, yeah, don't eat too much sugar. It's going to make you hyper. That is complete nonsense. That is just not true. Sugar does not make you hyper. I mean, look it up on, like Google it. It's not true. But we love this stuff as parents because, oh my God, my kid's acting crazy. They must have eaten too much sugar, too much candy. And so that's exactly what's happening today with technology. I think we do need to be very careful with technology. There's a whole chapter in my book on how to raise indistractable kids. But I wish more people would be concerned about what could they do? And of course, the most important thing they could do as parents is to be a good role model. You can't say to your kids, stop playing Fortnite, get off TikTok. And meanwhile, here you are checking work email on your phone. It doesn't work that way. I can't stand it how many families I go to dinner with my family, and any family with children, everybody around the table is looking at their phone, right? The mom, the dad, the kids, the brother, the sister, everybody's on their phones. Why are we having dinner together? I think it's a big problem. And I think we as adults, the first thing before you start complaining about the technology is to do something about yourself.
I resonate with that a lot, even though I don't have kids. I just observe like kids with their parents. You can see some of the kids they're craving for attention, but the parents are not giving it to them. They're on
So
their
true.
phone. They ask them to be quiet with nothing. I mean, like,
Right.
can you be quiet with nothing as a parent? No.
Right. That's exactly right. And then they wonder, they say, oh, my kid, he won't be quiet unless he has the iPad. It's because you're on your computer, right? It's because you're on your phone and you haven't brought crayons and a piece of paper and do something with them, talk to them, participate with it, involve them in the conversation around the table. So I think that's part of our parental responsibility.
Yeah, I want to tap into that a little bit because when you wrote the book, I'm trying to do a little bit of maths. I think your daughter this year is 16. And when you wrote the
Right.
book, it was 10 years ago, you start writing it 10 years ago. That's the moment maybe she was 6. So,
Yeah.
like that, did you talk about this moment that sparked the book with her? And did she
Yeah.
remember the same way?
She did, yeah. I mean, what you're alluding to, for those who haven't read the book yet, is that was kind of the genesis of why I wrote Indistractable. Was when I was playing with her, and I had this moment when I was on my phone as opposed to being fully present with her, and I was like, "What the heck is going on? I'm setting a terrible example here. I need to fix this in myself." She grew up with this philosophy, and I'm happy to say I think she has a very healthy relationship with her technology, and most importantly, we can talk about this stuff. Like, I can tell her I struggle. We all struggle, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with saying to your kids to be vulnerable. You know what? I struggle with this. Let's do this together. And that's the journey we've all been on.
Is she handling social media? How do you see her handling all of these compared to her peers?
Yeah. So so part of our philosophy is that we don't want to raise a child. We want to raise a future adult. And so we've given her a lot of freedom from a fairly young age, and she made choices for herself. So now, for example, she's 16. I can't tell her not to do anything, right? Like if she wants to use TikTok or Instagram, whatever she wants, she's welcome to. She chooses not to. She uses WhatsApp, which I don't really think is social media. She loves YouTube. She's on YouTube all the time, and she learns a ton. She taught herself how to play guitar 100% from YouTube. I never paid for a guitar lesson, and she plays beautifully. So I think those are very positive things, but she does set time limits for herself. It's very, very important. We wanted to teach her how to time box. So she uses time boxing. She, puts herself on a schedule so that she doesn't overdo it, but she's responsible for that kind of thing. I think what's interesting is that we don't look at this complex relationship. Facebook a few years ago, I remember they got a lot of heat for this survey they did where they found that girls who used Instagram,
Yeah.
I think it was like 20% of them said after using Instagram, they didn't feel great. They felt like somewhat bad, right? It was on like some scale. And they got a lot of flack for it. Oh my God, you knew that girls weren't feeling good after using Instagram. So somebody did something similar and asked girls, how do you feel after going to school?
What did they say?
100% of them feel like shit. Because at school you have cliques and you have bullying and you have oppressive teachers and you have homework out the wazoo. So we only look at these things that were new, that we didn't have in my day, so it must be bad. Meanwhile, nobody's questioning, wait a minute, why are kids locked in cages all day? Like, if you put people in a cage, guess what? They behave like animals. Yes, and so there's only one place in society where you can tell people what to think, where to go, what to dress, what to eat, and who to be friends with. And that's school and prison. So big surprise that kids, when they get out of school, they are looking for something to connect, something to feel free, somewhere to get their psychological nutrients met. And I talk about this a lot in my book. That's the real source of the problem. The technology is the expression of this dysfunction. It's not the source of the problem itself. The source of the problem itself is that kids don't have the kind of freedom and play they used to have. We are so restrictive as parents, partially because people are having a lot less kids, right? We know that people are just having fewer and fewer kids. So more attention, more oversight, more helicopter parenting goes into each and every kid. And that is not psychologically healthy. So when we take these unhealthy institutions out of the picture, turns out homeschooling kids do psychologically much better than kids who are on institutionalized learning. So maybe we should look at other causes of the problem rather than just saying, oh, it's tech, it's tech, it's tech.
Yeah, what you mentioned is actually also discussed and written in this book called The Anxious Generation.
Yeah, I'm in the book.
Yeah, I read it, of course, because I don't have kids, so I could not resonate with a lot of those. But I found it interesting is a lot of the studies focus on the Anglo-Saxon countries, US and UK. You yourself live, I think you spent most of your life in the US and before you moved to Singapore. Do you see a difference between the Western kids? Or
there definitely is, and John Haidt talks about John Haidt, I think it's pronounced, actually discusses this, that we don't see the same problems in the East that we see in the West, which is very, very interesting, right? Which tells you a lot, that if there was some poison in the water, it should affect everyone equally, and yet people in more communal societies, like those that, when you think of India, Singapore, China, Thailand, Indonesia, more communal societies, children seem to be inoculated. We don't see the same problems. We don't see the rise in suicidality. We don't see the rise in mental health issues because there is some kind of protective effect that these communal societies have on children that in more individualistic societies don't seem to have.
Yeah, I agree. Because when I was a kid, I think I'm the only child, this is the generation in China, I'm the only child in the family, but it feels like I was brought up by a lot of different parents. And they will be happy that I'm just go outside and play with my friends. But I found it in contrast though, my friends who are not Western, who are more like in the East, at my age, have problem focusing compared to Western friends. Usually when we sit down and talk, we put our phone upside down to talk.
Interesting. So wait, you're saying your Western friends do put their phones down, whereas your Chinese friends are on their phones?
My Chinese friends, they're constantly on our phones, but maybe because of our profession, they are constantly getting the trigger from their work. I can see couples, they're like two Chinese friends, they're dating, right? But then they're just like on their phone and without talking to each other.
Interesting. I mean, it could be, I don't know. There's all kinds of confounding variables, but it could be that you're seeing some of the overuse and the antisocial behavior, and maybe without the mental health issues, right? Like maybe Western people are just more likely to say, oh, I have a mental health issue, and maybe Asian people are less likely to report those kind of issues. Maybe psychiatry is kind of pushing this narrative that, oh, you probably have ADHD. Like anybody can get an ADHD diagnosis. It's incredibly easy. You just give them the right answers and boom, you've got it. There's no blood test. There's no scan. It's self-report. So that could be part of it as well. It doesn't mean that there aren't negative consequences. Like one of the techniques I talk about in the book is what happens when you're out with a bunch of friends. And this happens all the time in Singapore. And you're having a nice dinner and somebody pulls out their phone and starts, packing away at the phone. And you're trying to have a conversation with your friends. Yeah. So you can't say, Right. What do? You can't say, hey, put away your phone. You're being rude, because you're going to be rude saying that. So what you do is acknowledge that you don't know what's on that phone. You don't know what's on the other side of the screen. It could be an emergency. It could be somebody's child is sick. You have no idea. So instead of saying, get off your phone and hurting someone's feelings, what you want to say instead is you want to ask a simple question. That simple question is, hey, I see you on your phone. Is everything okay? See how simple that is? I'm just asking, is everything okay? And 9 times out of 10, they'll get the hint, right? Like, we're trying to have a conversation here. Put your phone away because we want you to join the conversation. Or, which is fine, they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. I've just got this thing happening with my kid right now. Just give me a minute. I got to go take care of it. Fine, no problem. Take care of it over there. Just like we don't smoke at the table. Go smoke outside. If you want to use your phone, go use your phone outside. And so I think maybe it just hasn't caught on in Eastern culture like it has with Western culture. In Western culture, you're absolutely right. It's kind of seen as rude to use your phone in front of other people.
Yeah, I think also it's because of a requirement from our work culture that people just assume that you have something very important. But that's an interesting thing. Is there anything that's exciting coming for you for the 2025 or next year? Some project?
So I'm working on my 3rd book. I can't talk too much about it yet because I don't know enough to tell you about it, but I'm working on that for the next year or so.
Oh, great. Let's go for a lightning round. Are you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. What's one distraction that you still indulge in guilt-free, if there's one?
So by definition, it's not a distraction if it's guilt-free. So it can be a diversion of attention, like watching a movie, but if I planned it, then it's not a distraction, it's traction. There's no every distraction should be full of guilt, and I don't have any guilt about the same exact activity. It's not about the activity itself. It's about, did I do it because I planned to do it, or did I do it because I'm trying to escape a bad feeling?
Okay. What's a book that changed the way you think about work or life?
Alchemy by Rory Sutherland was fantastic.
Oh, I need to put it on my list. Thank you. If you had to delete all but one app from your phone, which one would stay?
Pocket.
Pocket. Oh, it's the app that saves all the articles and stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, very good. There's also another app, actually, Competitor Reader, which I think might be actually better. I've just started playing with it, and I think it has some nice features.
Right. What's the weirdest or most unexpected experiment you've tried on yourself in the name of productivity?
Experiment?
Yeah.
Weird. The burn or burn technique. I talk about this in the book, that I have this technique that every day I can either burn some calories or burn $100 bill. And I've never had to burn the $100 bill. It's been like probably 6-7 years now. And I'm in the best shape of my life because I just do the exercise. I do the activity. So that's kind of a weird one.
Yeah. What's one tool or system, AI or otherwise, that had the biggest impact on your productivity?
Calendar. Simple calendar.
If you could master any skill instantly, what would it be?
It would be the skill to learn to enjoy difficult things.
Are you constantly on the journey for?
Yes, that's exactly right. Because eventually I do learn to love it. That's how I've learned. Like, I used to hate to write. Now I love writing. I used to hate exercise. Now I kind of love exercise. Like, it takes a long time. But if I could, you said instantly, right? So if I could instantly find a switch to like go from, wow, that's really hard and I don't like to do it, to, oh my God, the pain is fantastic. I love it. That would be great.
Yeah. Best and worst career advice you've ever received?
The worst advice is, if you want to be more productive, learn how to say no. That is the kind of advice that only a professor with tenure can say, because professors can't get fired. If, I don't know, anybody who's worked a real job, if you tell your boss, oh yeah, boss, no, I don't want to do that, you're going to get fired. Like, that is the stupidest advice I've ever heard. So I talk about in the book what to do instead of saying no. You don't say no. You say, can you help me prioritize? And you show them, hey, here's my calendar. Here's the stuff I can't fit on my calendar. Help me prioritize. And that's actually the real job of a manager. It's the only job of a manager, is to help you prioritize. So that's the worst advice, is to be more productive, say no. The best piece of advice is that nobody knows what they're doing. Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. Even the people you think, oh my God, they're so good, they know everything, they're so smart, we're all just winging it. We're all just trying to figure it out. So make your own reality.
Yeah, that's such a good advice. It's a humbling one as well. So I have a closing tradition, is you're going to answer a question from a previous guest.
Sure.
So the question is, what's something that you never realized you were capable of until you tried?
What haven't I realized I was capable of until I tried? I mean, I didn't know I'd be a good father or a good husband or a good author or a good speaker or a good anything. And I'm not very good at any of those, but I'm trying. But I didn't know until I tried.
Yeah, it's the realization you can always achieve what you want to be, maybe.
Yeah. And the first step is giving it a shot.
So can you leave a question for the next guest as well?
Sure. What is the biggest problem facing mankind? Let's make it an easy one.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Nir. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Before we wrap up, if there are any places that people can find your work and anything.
Sure. Yeah, my website is Nir and Far. It's spelled Nir and Far, so Nir like my first name, nirandfar.com. And the book is titled Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life.
Yeah, I recommend everyone to go and order the book and read it and apply all of those tips and hacks.
Thank you so much.
Wish one day we can actually do this recording in person and have the best 2025. I'm looking forward to your next book.
Looking forward to seeing you as well. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So that's another episode of Escape 9 to 5. Escape 9 to 5 is my way to help people visualize and see the stories behind those who have changed their life from a traditional 9 to 5 job to a different portfolio life. If you like this video, you might resonate with this video as well. All the links will be in the show notes and you feel free to check out. If you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and if you like it, don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps the podcast to be discovered by other people. And if you like any specific clips or mantras or any takeaway from this video, please share with us in the comments down below. Share with your friends and family. That really helps the podcast. Thanks for being on this amazing journey. Until next time, I hope this episode gives you a little bit of inspiration, nudge you a little bit to do something on your own or just try something out for the first time ever. We're here with you. We have this whole community and all the guests coming. I'll see you next time.